Alien Romulus is directed by Fede Alvarez and stars Kaylee Spaney, David Johnson, and among others. And this story is set between Alien and Aliens, where you have a group of space colonists that are going through this remains of this space station called the Romulus, where they encounter, as you see from the trailer, they encounter facehuggers and alien xenomorph that they have to survive from. Now I'll leave it there because there's also some other stuff that I don't want to get into detail because this is definitely one that you have that goes into really big spoiler territory, and I'm not going to go into any detail on that. But they're pretty much having to survive like like you see in the other Alien films. Now here's a little backstory. Now this movie was directed by Fede Alvarez, who I've actually really enjoyed as a director for the most part. When he originally did Evil Dead from 2013, the remake, I was very skeptical at first because I thought it was just going to be just a carbon copy of the first movie. But he made something really great with spinning a new tale on the mythology of Evil Dead and doing a really great horror type of movie that I went back to basics like the first one. And he also did his follow-up with Don't Breathe, which I really enjoyed as well, with that very kind of claustrophobic sense of, you know, being in the shadows and stuff and trying to survive from a blind man and everything. I thought that was really unique. And I haven't seen his follow-up to that one, Don't Breathe 2, but even though he didn't direct that one, I just didn't really get a chance to watch that one because I just heard it wasn't that good. But the guy has made us some other ones that he's also wrote and directed too, especially with The Girl in the Spider's Web that I thought was a decent follow-up, but it could have been better. And then going in as a longtime Alien fan growing up, I mean, what can I say? Alien to me is like one of my all-time favorite sci-fi franchises, and the original film and Aliens, they're kind of like Terminator and Terminator 2. Like they're different, but they're still unique in their own way, with basically sparking the ground of, you know, the first Alien making it to where you're seeing what it's like being trapped in space on a space station all alone and everything from a creature. I thought, you know, to even this day, it still holds up, and it's definitely one of my all-time favorite movies. And then Aliens is also, to me, one of the best sequels of all time. And it really proved the ground with how James Cameron likes to do with his sequels, especially with Terminator and Terminator 2. Like he did with Terminator 2, Aliens I feel like is even better than the first one in so many regards because it's able to still keep the momentum of the first one, but also make it to where there's a lot of action going on where I kept myself really engaged with so much happening. But over the years, it really seems like the Alien franchise has been very hit and miss with a lot of things, with a lot of different ones that come in. Like Alien 3, to me, I still find as, not counting the Alien vs. Predator films, Alien 3 to me I think is still the worst of the series. But there's still elements that I still like with the movie. It just feels like it was such a cluttered mess that really, if they would have just had a better script or direction in mind with the studio not really coming in to, you know, mess with the movie and stuff, I think there probably could have been a really good movie in there somewhere. But as it stands, 3 I still find as the worst. But Alien Resurrection I know gets a lot of hate on, but I honestly don't hate the movie. I just think that I just think it's decent. It just feels like it'll never be compared to it'll never come close to the first two, but it still does something I find myself really interested in. I know a lot of people don't like Alien Resurrection, but to me I still think that it's not I still don't mind it so much. I mean, it's just entertaining in its own regard. Now, Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem, I can really disregard those as even canon because those movies to me are what killed the franchise for a long time, and they were able to pretty much put a bullet in the head of both the Alien and Predator franchise by not even, while wasting so much of the concept with not being able to really put much on the Alien versus Predator. And even when you do see some of the action on screen, it's just there, and it's really shitty the way it looks in Requiem, where you can't even hardly see what's going on. And so, for many years, we were kind of wondering like where the series was going on for a while, and then when Prometheus came out, it made it to where they were able to do a whole new spin on the whole, like, expand on the universe, so to speak, with it being a prequel. And to me, honestly, I still really enjoy Prometheus, and I do also like how it was able to do its own thing while still keep being connected to Alien. Now, Alien Covenant did have a lot of potential that I really enjoyed, and for about the first 2/3, I do enjoy Alien Covenant. It's just that it does feel very rushed, and there's a lot of stuff that they really could have done better with. But it seems like for a while that they were planning on doing a trilogy with Ridley Scott's vision of the Prometheus and Covenant, because for many years there was talk about possibly doing a follow-up of after Covenant came out. But since Covenant didn't really do too well, it seems like they just put plans on hold and just decided to do something different. And I was all for the idea of them doing something, you know, else of what else they were. I was kind of bummed out that we didn't get the chance to see the follow-up that Ridley Scott was going to do. Because going into this one, I'll be honest, I was very skeptical and didn't really think much of it, because it was one of those kind of movies that I felt like it really seemed like it was just kind of copying the first two movies and really seemed like they were just rehashing stuff that we've seen before. But after upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that I actually did enjoy this one. There's some flaws that do hold the movie back for me, that hold it back from being great. But I still really did enjoy it, and it was able to still go back to basics like I felt with the first two movies, at least. And so, and also, while I was at the theater, I also got the cup of Alien Romulus there, and they were selling these at the theater, and so I just decided to grab it. I love how it's also green on the inside, too. So, but to get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were great. Kaylee Spaney, what can I say? I've really enjoyed her for a lot of other films I've seen her in so far, especially earlier this year with Civil War. And she holds her own regarding this as Rain in this, where she is kind of the Ripley equivalent, but I appreciate that the movie, you know, still gives it to where she has her own kind of flaws going on, and she kind of becomes a little like Ripley in certain aspects, but she still holds her ground. I thought she was really great. And the dynamic that it also shows of her and her brother, her synthetic brother that's played by David Johnson as the android Andy, I thought was really great. And he had a really good character arc that I appreciate, where he's kind of starting out as just kind of more of the caring type, and then as it goes along, it starts to show that he's, you know, he's becoming a lot more resourceful in certain aspects. And there's a certain part that happens, I won't spoil, but it does have a really big connection to the other films that I won't spoil, but I thought it was a nice spin on how they did things, and so he was great. And then the rest of the cast were good. Nothing really to write home about because they're kind of just the ones that are just there to support the rest of the crew and stuff. But they all make it their own, and the way that my other and my other biggest praise the most is definitely the atmosphere that it sets up, especially with it being this very claustrophobic spaceship that they go on, where it's like the first film. It's like basically being on a haunted house, where, you know, you're in the shadows, and it definitely gives the vibe like the first film. And one of the other little details I appreciate is like the little CRT kind of screens that they have that resemble the technology from the first film, like when it was made in the 70s. I really appreciate that. And then I also really love the way that this movie really builds upon tension after tension, because for about the first half, we're really getting into it to where they're kind of just lurking around, just exploring some stuff. But as shit goes down more deeper, it really starts to get me on the edge, and it was almost giving me anxiety at points. Like, it definitely is one of those kind of films that the director knows what he's doing when it comes to trying to build these type of elements up. And while there are a couple points I will get into my cons later with, that feel very predictable, and it seems like they were, you know, typical horror movie cliches that you see in other films, I still appreciate that it was able to get me on the edge, and the sound design and the way that it was able to incorporate the familiar score from the other films, I thought was a really nice touch. And just the practical effects alone of the alien I thought were really great, and it definitely felt like I was watching something like out of the first film again. You know, I'm glad they didn't go the CGI route, because that would have been very distracting, because when the characters are seeing the alien, they're only just getting a glimpse of what the xenomorph basically looks like, because it's one of those kind of movies where it's all, you know, the less is more, where it's kind of like Jaws, where you see less of the monster and focusing more on the suspense that it builds up with. And so this movie is just, as it keeps going, I found myself very engaged with the way that the story was able to play out and expand on some stuff, because there's actually elements in here that I was surprised they were able to not only explore stuff from some of the other films, but also another film in the Alien franchise that I won't give away, but it really made me kind of give me a smile on my face, especially when it leads to its third act, because I was like, wow, they actually went that route and went and did something that has like a, kind of sets the basis for another certain film. So I thought that was great. And you know, the gore when it is on screen, it is good, but if I had to get into some of my cons, I will have to say that the movie does kind of lack certain stuff that you kind of expect with some of the other Alien films, where there's not too much emphasis on gore as it is more of, you know, lurking in the shadows and building more of the suspense up like the first one. But when it is on screen, it is really good. It's just that there's not really a whole lot of focus on it, because it's more about, you know, setting the stage of the characters having to survive. And then one of the other things I did also notice too was that there's a couple lines in the film that I did kind of question, like how the characters would really know those certain lines, and it has to do with lines from the other films, and I won't give away what they are, but it does feel like it was kind of just, okay, it was just there just to be a reference to the other films. You know, it seems like it really felt like it was just more of just nostalgia for that regard. And then on top of that, there is some noticeable CGI in one part, and well, I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say that The CGI they used for it, I think, is interesting, but it looks good at first, but as it goes along, you do start to notice how it looks a little too not so rendered at certain points, if that makes sense. So there's that, but I still think that the intention that they were going for, I thought was really nice. I thought it was still nice being able to still expand on some stuff when they bring in this certain character. So I thought that was great. And then some of the other things too is that there's some really dumb moments that happen, not too far in between, but when there's parts where there are a couple points where some of the characters can feel a little like, okay, you do realize you're gonna get you know, you kind of question like, okay, why would the character do this? You know, and just it's a typical stuff that you see in a lot of horror films, and it's like you have it's like it just really makes the choice that the character does very illogical, and it's just all just set up to get into a big scene that happens. And I'll leave it there. But other than that, though, I still really did enjoy the film. I still thought it still brought a unique, fresh take on the franchise, and it makes me really curious where the series is going after this, because I don't think Ridley Scott will ever get to finish his trilogy with Prometheus and Alien Covenant. But if we ever get him coming back, or whatever Fidel Alvarez does later on, I'm definitely still keen to what either of them do. And so, with that being said, I'm going to give the film a compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. And so, for those of you who have also seen Alien Romulus and the other films in the Alien franchise, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.